turn to one another right now and just say this is a little bit awkward. Just have a little conversation while we fix this. I'd rather do this.
Want to unplug it? I'll go get it.
Yeah.
Unplug it.
Oh, okay, yeah. Testing. All right, there we go. Thanks for your patience. Hey, listen, if you've been coming to the church last few weeks because you're really into baby dedications, we apologize, we don't have one today. We've been working on it, but that evangelistic strategy just has come to an end for this month, and we do appreciate all the kids that we've been able to dedicate lately. Hey, I want to give you a quick announcement that's fairly important. Next Sunday begins a new time change for the church. We're going to actually start our summer hours at 10 o'clock instead of 10:30. That way you'll be able to leave service a little bit earlier, 11:30, and enjoy the sun a little bit more. How many are appreciative of that? All right. I know I am. Those of you who come for early morning prayer, or for the pre-service prayer, I'd encourage you just to meet me in the prayer room around 9:15. We'll pray in there for about half an hour, and then come in here, and you guys will be able to enjoy, like I said, the summer weather a little bit more. Well, we're going into our last sermon for this series of On Guard, and the next week we begin our new series called Third Person, looking at the Holy Spirit, His role in our lives, and the way He functions, and the things that He desires throughout the summer. But I thought, just before we start this message, that I would just like to take a moment to thank Pastor Adam for helping me out the last number of weeks. I mean, he has been wearing bridle. He's been up here for all kinds of illustrations. And so, Pastor Adam, I'm going to just ask you to come up. Just so appreciate you. I know that I'm always up here, and I'm always getting a drink. People always provide water, and so I just thought, I've got 2 glasses right here, so I just thought I'd give you one just as a way to say thank you for being such a blessing to me. What's wrong?
Hang on a second. How come I got the half-empty one?
No,
and yours is half full?
No, but
I see how it is. Half empty, half full. I see who you think more important here.
No, I made sure that they were equal.
No, mine is definitely half empty. Yours is definitely half full.
It's the same thing.
No, it's not.
Okay, listen, this is what we'll do. I'll switch it. You can have this one. I'll take this one. If it's going to be such a big deal, I'm trying to bless you. What's the problem now?
I don't know how you did it. But as you switched the cup to me, mine is now once again half empty, and yours is half full.
Adam, I am telling you.
No, I do not know what is going on here. What kind of tricks you're pulling, but this is half empty again.
Look, if you look at these glasses, they're exactly the same. I made sure of it.
Hang on. No, definitely half full. Definitely
all right,
half empty.
All right, okay, here.
Switch.
Yeah, you can have that one. There, is that better?
Oh, my goodness. I wore a horse bridle for you. I was something else for you. You humiliate my weight loss program. And this is what you give me? Another half-empty glass. I should just throw it on you. I should
Okay, you know what? I just don't have time for this. We got to get to a message, so here.
Finally.
Take it all.
Finally.
Take it all.
Finally. Way to guard your relationship.
Some of us, no matter what we do in life, no matter what comes our way, we keep looking at the glass like it's half empty. You can look at life as either being half full or half empty. But if we look at everything half empty, we will constantly be going through life with negativism. And for many of us, we are challenged constantly with relationships, with the things that we try to accomplish in life, and even our approach with life because of a wrong attitude, a negative attitude. You see, a negative attitude an attitude is a perspective on life that's based upon our feelings and our thoughts that causes us to talk, to think, and to act in a certain way. And for so many people, they have a negative attitude on life, and they're constantly stopped from accomplishing the best, from experiencing the best. You see, some of us, in our relationships, we have a negative attitude constantly. And we are constantly around people, and we're complaining and criticizing and always talking about the worst of the worst, looking at things as if they were half empty. And when we get to that place, and we keep talking like that, the people who hang out with us don't want to hang out with us anymore. How many people really enjoy being around somebody negative? Is there anybody out there? Yeah, the only people who enjoy hanging out with negative people are negative people. The people who just like venting, those are the people who like hanging out with negative people. But you hang out with somebody who's negative for a little while, who's got an incredibly negative attitude, and after a little while, you'll get so frustrated, you're like, I don't want to be with that person anymore. For some of us, our negative attitude, our negative approach to life, it causes us to look at everything as if it's going to fail. If I go this way, I'm going to fail. If I go this direction, it's going to be bad. If I go over here, things are going to turn out for the worse. And we're just constantly going around with this life, with this smug look on our face because we're looking at life negatively. Some of us quit way too early because we're looking at things negatively. And we have this negative attitude that just follows us everywhere we go. And yet, friends, the life that we're called to live is a life that's full of excitement. The people that we're called to work alongside are people who are growing in faith, people who God has shown incredible grace towards, and we need to guard our attitude. We need to make sure that we go through this life not constantly critical, not constantly negative, not constantly looking at things as if they'll fail, not looking at things as if the glass was half empty. But friends, as the church of Jesus Christ, the ones that have been bought by Jesus' blood, we are called to have an attitude that says the glass is half full. The glass is half full, not half empty. I want to talk to you about guarding your attitude this morning. I want you to turn your Bibles to John chapter 6. I want to look at 4 quick principles about guarding your attitude. The very first is that we need to remove the limitations. Look at this. John chapter 6, verses 1 to 9. It says, sometime after this, Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee, that is the Sea of Tiberias. And a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the miraculous signs he had performed on the sick. Then Jesus went up on the mountainside and sat down with his disciples, and the Jewish Passover feast was near. When Jesus looked up and saw the great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" He asked this only to test him, for he already knew what he had in mind and what he was going to do. Philip answered him, 8 months' wages would not buy enough bread for each of us to have one bite. Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. Here's a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will that go amongst so many? Friends, Jesus is about to create this incredible situation. He's about to create a moment that will be talked about for centuries. He sees this incredibly large crowd, thousands of people, thousands upon thousands, and he turns to his disciples and he wants to know how he can feed them, how they can take care of their physical need of food. He's setting the stage for the most incredible moment. And these disciples are sitting around, they're looking at Jesus with this incredibly awkward look on their face, this look of bewilderment because they don't understand why Jesus would ask this question. And Philip, first of all, he answers, he says, "Hey, Jesus, don't you know that 8 months' wages would not buy enough bread for each one to have a bite?" Jesus, even if we had 8 months' wages, we'd be performing a communion service. I mean, just little pieces of bread, Jesus. Come on. If we even had that much money, it would be so insignificant. And Jesus, all we have would leave such an insignificant impact, and he sets a limitation on his life. And then Peter goes, hey, Jesus, we've got this little boy's lunch, some fish and some bread. He says, but how far will that go? And friends, here they are with Jesus. Here they are serving the Master. Here they are serving the miracle worker. And these two disciples have an attitude that's negative, an attitude that says, hey, we are limited in what we're able to do. We're limited in what we're able to accomplish here. We can't do a whole lot because even if we had 8 months' wages, we'd only be able to do this much. Hey, even though we have this boy's lunch, we can't accomplish a whole lot. And their attitude's a negative attitude because they put limitations on their lives. Friends, I want you to know that when you walk with Jesus, when you have Jesus in your life, you need to change your attitude about what you can and can't accomplish. Because you might only have 8 months' wages. You might only have a boy's lunch. But when you hook up with Jesus, anything's possible. You can remove the limitations. Everybody in the world says 8 months' wages won't get you very far. They put the limits on you. But when you hook up with Jesus, 8 months' wages can take you further than you ever thought you would go. You might only have a little bag of fish and some loaves of bread, and the world may be saying to you, hey, you're limited in what you're able to accomplish. But when you hook up with Jesus, the limitations go. You can accomplish the miraculous. You can multiply what you have in your hands. You can have 12 baskets full when you hook up with Jesus. You see, these two disciples are at a place where their attitude's wrong. They are looking at the limitations of what they can't do. And friends, I want to tell you that there are too many Christians who are walking through life saying, I can only accomplish this. I can only give this much. I can only do this. I am very limited in the resources I have. And they are constantly unable to fill in. They're constantly unable to give financially. They are constantly unable to step in and volunteer because they continuously limit their lives, and their attitude has become negative to their role in this world. But when you hook up with Jesus, when you give your lives to Him, you can realize that He removes the limitations. He takes the lid off. He says, join me and see what you can accomplish. You need to start looking at the glass as if it were half full, not half empty. May 9th, 1770, there was a man by the name of James Parrott, and he ran the mile in 4 minutes. People were astounded. They couldn't believe that this man was able to do this unthinkable thing. And for many, many years, people would talk about James Parrott and say, hey, this guy has done it. There's no possible way it could ever be accomplished. And they kept speaking of the limitations. Only James did it. Only James did it. Nobody else could do that again. Nobody else could run the mile in 4 minutes. Nobody will ever accomplish this again. But there was this man named Roger Bannister, a British man. And in his mind, he believed that there were no limitations on what he could do. Even though everybody else said that it's impossible to accomplish certain things, he changed his attitude. He changed his perspective. He believed that he could go beyond what other people said he could do. And he began to practice with some of his fellow runners and began to pace himself. And on May 6, 1954, Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile. He did what everybody else said was impossible. Now, friends, after he did that, people began to talk about how great he was. And they said he's the only man who could ever do this. And once again, the community, the public, society began to put limitations on runners. They said only this man, only Roger Bannister can accomplish this. There's nobody who's going to do this again. Since that point, 336 people approximately have broken the 4-minute mile. Because when you're determined, there are no limitations. You see, people, we are people of faith. We are not people of pessimism. We are not minimalists. We are not realists. We are a people who believes in a God who's able to accomplish anything. And so many times I'm walking with Christians who are telling me why we can't do certain things. Why we're going to fail in a certain area. Why things are going to be so negative in a certain place. They're walking around predicting doom and gloom. But Hebrews tells me that without faith, it's impossible to please God. And we need to be a people of faith who begin to believe that the God we serve is not just some God who's able to send His Son to die on the cross for all of humanity, but He is a God who's able to take that little lunch and multiply it. He is a God who can take 8 months' wages and do incredible things. He's a God who can take your life and do the most incredible things that you've ever dreamed about. This shy young boy, 15 years old, saying to God, there's no possible way you could use me. I'll never be able to stand in front of people and communicate. I'm too shy. God says, take off the limitations. Take off the limitations. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. And God wants His church to be a people of faith. He wants us to begin to remove the limitations and begin to dream about things that there is no possible way that they could happen through our lives. But with Jesus, anything's possible. You see, Moses says, Father, all I have is a staff. All I have is a staff. There's no way I can lead the people of Israel out with that. But we know the story. Then there's David. He's got just a slingshot. Oh, just a couple of rubber bands and a couple pieces of stick he found out in the wilderness. And it doesn't seem like he can take on the giant. All he has is just the sling. I'm sure there were people who had an incredibly negative attitude towards David. That boy with that sling, he's going to take on the giant? Oh yeah, he is. Because David was a man who removed the limitations on his life. You see, then there's Gideon. Gideon has this army, and this army of 300 people, and he's so concerned, God, how are we going to defeat the enemy with this army? We're limited in what we have. We're limited in the people who are going to go and attack. But with God, all things are possible. With God, anything can happen. With God, there are no limitations, and Gideon's successful. And then you look at Jesus with his 12 disciples. Oh, friends, I mean, these 12 unlearned, this group of individuals who are so rough and so unfit for roles of leadership. And he takes these 12. It seems like he is limiting his ministry. But with these 12, he transforms the world. Oh, you may look at this church and go, well, we've always been around the 400 mark. Oh, well, we only are limited in our resources. If Jesus can take the 12 and he can transform the world, what can we do with 400 people? What can we do with this congregation? What can we do with some people who will remove the limitations and say, I have faith that God can do something incredible with me? Friends, listen to me for a second. Stop walking around telling me why we can't do it. With God, we can do anything. With God, we can accomplish all things. It's time we start to dream. It's time our eyes begin to look at the glass as if it's half full, not as if it's half empty. We need to believe for this community and for this world as if the glass is half full, because with God, not only is it half full and it's flowing over. We need to remove the limitations. We need to change our perspective. Number 2, I want you to turn over in your Bibles to Luke chapter 5. Not only do we need to remove the limitations, but friends, we need to look for destiny, not deficiencies in one another. Look for destiny, not deficiencies in one another. Look at this. One day, Jesus was standing by the lake of Gennesaret with the people crowding around him and listening to the word of God. He saw at the water's edge 2 boats left there by the fishermen who were washing their nets. He got into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, and asked him to put out a little from shore. And then he sat down and taught the people from the boat. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into the deep water and let down the nets for a catch." Simon answered, "Master, we've worked hard all night and haven't caught anything, but because you say so, I will let down the nets." And when they had done so, there was such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. So they signaled their partners in the other boat to come and to help them, and they came and filled both boats so full that they began to sink. When Simon Peter saw this, he fell at Jesus' knees and said, "Go away from me, Lord, I'm a sinful man." For he and all his companions were astonished at the catch of fish they had taken. And so were James and John, the sons of Zebedee, Simon's partners. Then Jesus said to Simon, "Don't be afraid. From now on, you will catch men." Now flip over just very quickly to John chapter 1, verses 40 to 42. Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, was one of the 2 who heard what John had said and who had followed Jesus. The first thing Andrew did was to find his brother Simon and tell him, "We have found the Messiah," that is the Christ. And he brought him to Jesus. Jesus looked at him and said, "You are Simon, son of John, you will be called Cephas," which when translated is Peter, or rock. Peter, he's a fisherman. I did a little study this week about fishermen. Fishermen were crude individuals. I mean, these were not your white-collar individuals. They were incredibly crude at times. They were rough communicators. I mean, these are not the kids you would or these are not the fishermen that you would normally have teaching your kids. You know, they wouldn't hold back. They wouldn't know how to be politically correct in their speech. And these were the individuals who were rough with other people. They didn't have time to be patient, and they didn't have time to pay attention to all the wording. They were usually rough with other people. This fisherman, not only were these the characteristics, but Peter's just a common individual. There's nothing special about him. The majority of people living in the Bible times their occupation were gatherers of food. And so Simon is just an average, blow-Joe, crude, rough individual. There's nothing special about his life. And then he's got this name Simon, coming from the name Simeon, which is named after Jacob's second oldest son, who ruthlessly avenged his sister's rape. He acted impulsively and rash. And so here we got this Simon, the common, the rash, the impulsive, the unlearned, the crude, the rough individual. Oh, he's a candidate for the board. I mean, he's got all the qualities, you know. You want to talk about election time? I mean, put that on the resume. Here's a guy who's unlearned. Here's a guy who acts impulsively. Here's a guy who's rash. Here's a guy who doesn't know how to communicate with people. Here's a guy who is about as average as they come. You should vote for him. And Jesus comes along and he says these two statements. He says, Peter, from this point forward, you are going to be a fisher of men. Peter has just experienced this whole night of failure. He has been fishing all night long. The fisherman who knows the spots, who knows how to fish, has been incredibly unsuccessful. And in the midst of his failure, Jesus declares over him destiny. In the midst of heartbreak and disappointment and furiously working with no success, Jesus declares over him destiny. From this point on, Peter, you will be a fisher of men. And then in the verse that we read in John, he comes up to him and speaks to him as Simon. And he says, you are Simon. He says, but from this point forward, you shall be called Cephas. You will be called I'm going to change your name. I'm tired of you walking around with this rash, impulsive name. I want to declare something over your life for your future. You're going to be rock. You're going to be the stable one. You're going to be the one who's got a foundation for the future. Now, Jesus knew about Peter's life. He knew what he was like. He knew who he was bringing along on the crew. He knew what his future would be. He knew that there would be times where he would be impulsive, that he'd be rash, that he'd be saying stupid things and doing stupid things and bringing his sword to a prayer meeting. I mean, he knew all about Peter. But friends, this is so key. Jesus could have walked through his life with a negative attitude about people, looking at all the deficiencies that they have, all the weaknesses, all the problematic things that they had. But what Jesus does, he keeps a positive attitude, and instead of looking for deficiencies, he looks for destiny. He looks for destiny. He doesn't say, oh, you crude common fisherman who carries around swords to prayer meetings. You little fisherman who doesn't have a clue what to do with the boys' lunch. How'd you even get that boys' lunch, thief? I don't know whether or not he stole it. But he could have picked up on all the negatives. But what does Jesus do? He chooses not to focus on the deficiencies of Peter, but to look for his destiny. Friends, let me tell you something. Some of us look around at other people in this place, other people in our homes, other people in our workplace, and all we do is see the deficiencies. Oh, this person, they've constantly got an attitude. Oh, this person, they constantly are the center of attention. Oh, this person's so arrogant. Oh, this person said this to me. Oh, this person did this, and this person, and we heap on all their deficiencies, and in our hearts we begin to get an attitude towards those people. And we judge them, and we pile up, and we've got our list. It's like Santa Claus. We're checking it twice, and we just keep checking the negative column. This is wrong. This is wrong about their life. This is wrong about their life. This is wrong about their life. And as we look around, all we're doing is seeing each other's deficiencies. Friends, there's not a person in this room that you won't see deficiency in. Especially me. And no amens, please. We are an imperfect people who are growing, trying to get closer to God. So let off. Honestly, let off each other. Stop. Stop having an attitude towards each other. We have deficiencies. Start to see the destiny that Jesus sees for people's lives. Start to see what he sees. Oh, Pastor, it's so hard. Well, Jesus was able to do it with the crude fisherman who had just failed all night. Jesus was able to do it. He was able to declare something over this man's future, even though he knew he would fail again. Even though this man would hurt him so dearly by denying him on the most important night of Jesus' life. But he still saw destiny. He still saw destiny. Friends, we've got to see destiny over each other's lives. Now, I know that there are going to be people who will say things they shouldn't say to you. I know that there will be people who will do things that they shouldn't do to you. But friends, if you spend all your life collecting all the deficiencies of one another, you will have such a guarded heart and you will have such an attitude towards everybody else in the place. But if you look towards one another and go, God's got a plan for that person. I see a dream for that person. I see them becoming something. Not who they are now, but they're becoming something. I see a future for them. Then, friends, all of a sudden your heart begins to change and your attitude towards other people gets much, much better. Walt Disney was hired by a newspaper company when he first got started. And he didn't work at the newspaper company very long because the newspaper company thought that he didn't have very good ideas. So they fired him. Walt Disney, not good ideas. So this little minister in Kansas finds out about Walt Disney, invites him to come and have a conversation. And this little minister says to Walt Disney, hey, listen, would you be willing to draw some advertisements for our church so we can kind of promote ourselves more in the community? And Walt Disney didn't have much on his plate at the time, and so he says, sure, I'd love to do that. That this minister saw the potential in Walt Disney. And so he hired him for these ads for the church. And Walt Disney didn't have a place to stay, and this minister so believed in him, so saw destiny in him, that he allowed him to live in the garage that belonged to the church. So this garage is full of mice. And he's looking around at all these mice, and he's like, I see them every day. He says, I might as well start to name them. And there's one mouse that just kept on showing up. He decided to give him the name Mickey. And we all know the conclusion of the story is that Mickey Mouse became the famous character that made Walt Disney incredibly successful. This minister saw destiny for Walt's life. And this minister didn't look at all the things that were wrong. He didn't fire him because of all the negatives. He looked at him for the things that he could accomplish. He believed in him. And friends, it's time we start to look at one another with belief that God's got an incredible potential for every single person in this room. The person beside you might be the person who will lead the next revival. The person beside you might be the person who will do something significant for Ottawa. The person beside you has a plan that God has orchestrated for their life. They may have deficiencies, but look at the person beside you. Just do it just for a quick sec. Look at the person on your left. Look at the person on your right. Those are individuals that God has put a plan together for. Those are individuals that God has declared destiny for. Those are individuals that God has great dreams for. And friends, if we constantly are going around looking at deficiencies, we will miss what God sees. You see, until you get an alignment that aligns with God's alignment of people, until your perspective lines up with His perspective of people, you will always have a negative attitude towards those around you because we will constantly hurt. We will constantly say things we shouldn't say. We will constantly do things we shouldn't do. We need to change our attitude. You see, God always sees destiny. Noah has a drinking problem. Abraham is too old for kids. Jacob's a liar. Moses stutters. Gideon's afraid. Samson is a womanizer. Rahab's a prostitute. Timothy's way too young. David, the man after God's heart, he's a guy who's had an affair and killed somebody. Jonah ran from God. Elijah was suicidal. And Job went bankrupt. Want to hire one of those to be your pastor? And God looks at every single one of them despite their deficiencies, and He sees destiny. He sees potential in their life. He sees a plan. He looks at Gideon, this man who's all afraid. He's in the wine press. He's sifting the wheat in the wine press. And he sees a man who everybody else sees deficiencies in. And he says, that's my man. That's the one that I have a destiny for. That's the one who's going to accomplish great things. He looks at that young teenage boy, David, and he says, that's my man. That's the one who's going to take on the giant. Everybody else sees the deficiencies, but God sees the destiny. Friends, we must be a church that looks towards one another with eyes of destiny. We must be a church that guards our attitude when people do things that are not right, say things that are not right, hurt us at times, and we are so inclined to lean towards staying in the camp where we list the deficiencies. We've got to be people who guard our attitude and say, no matter what they said, no matter what they've done, I believe God's got a plan for them. I believe that there's a destiny over their life. 400 to 500 people in this place that God has got a destiny for. We've got to guard our attitudes. Thirdly, just turn over to Judges chapter 16. Just trying to pay attention to my time. Judges chapter 16. Third point is recognize your past does not determine your future. Do you know that there are times that people have an attitude towards life? I mean, some of us have experienced some pretty bad things. We've faced some failures in the past. We've been hurt in the past. We've faced situations that we really can't even talk about. And the honest truth is some of us are bound by our past. I talked a bit about that last week. We are looking towards our past, and we see all that has taken place. The problem is that while all this has taken place, we have come to believe that this equals our future. That if we failed in the past, most likely we're going to fail in the future. That if we were hurt in the past, most likely we're going to get hurt in the future. That if we sinned before, we're probably going to be sinful in the future. That if we didn't see God's hand in that prayer in the past, then we're not going to see His hand in the prayer in the future. And we look into the future with this negative attitude that everything is going to be half empty because of our past. And now the scripture, Judges chapter 16, 23 to 30. Now the rulers of the Philistines assembled to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon, their god, and to celebrate, saying, our God has delivered Samson, our enemy, into our hands. When the people saw him, they praised their God, saying, our God has delivered our enemy into our hands, and the one who laid waste our land and multiplied our slain. And while they were in high spirits, they shouted, bring out Samson to entertain us. And so they called Samson out of the prison, and he performed for them. And when they stood him among the pillars, Samson said to the servant who held his hand, put me where I can feel the pillars that support the temple, so that I may lean against them. Now the temple was crowded with men and women, and all the rulers of the Philistines were there. And on the roof were about 3,000 men and women watching Samson perform. Then Samson prayed to the Lord, O sovereign Lord, remember me. O God, please strengthen me just once more, and let me with just one blow get revenge on the Philistines for my 2 eyes. Then Samson reached toward the 2 central pillars on which the temple stood, and bracing himself against them, his right hand on the one and his left hand on the other, Samson said, let me die with the Philistines. And then he pushed with all his might, and down came the temple on the rulers and all the people in it. Thus he killed many more when he died than when he lived. Samson is this guy who really is a failure. This great man of God who was chosen before he was ever born to do some incredible things for God. Nazirite vow that would determine that he would have this incredible strength and he would be God's judge who would deal with the Philistines. And moment after moment, the Spirit of God would come upon Samson and he'd have incredible success. But Samson liked his women. He liked any girl who walked by who looked really pretty. And that was his weakness. And he found himself in all these situations. And finally, he's with Delilah. And you read through the story, it's quite the most ridiculous story because he's dating this girl who is trying to figure out where his strength comes from. And she would ask him, hey, tell me how your strength, how you have all this strength. And he would talk to her, and he'd make up a story. He says, well, if you tie my hands with some rope, he says, then my strength is gone. And he'd fall asleep, and all of a sudden the Philistines would just happen to be there right after he shared how he could be beaten. And this keeps happening, and he's not cluing in. He's blinded by love. He has become so flippant with God's hand upon his life that he's getting closer and closer to his ultimate fail. And finally, one night he says to Delilah, if you shave off all my hair, my strength will be gone. I'll have broken the Nazirite vow. My commitment before God will have been broken. He doesn't go into all the details, but that's really what's taking place. And he's so flippant with what God has for his life that she shaves his head and he gets caught by the Philistines. Now we're in this story. And there's this big temple, and they're having a worship service for this god Dagon. 3,000 people in the place. I mean, it's full. I mean, it is full of excitement and energy. And they are singing these worship songs to Dagon. And there's Samson, and he's in the prison, and his eyes have been gouged out of his head, so he can't see anything. I don't know what Samson would have done to perform, but there's something that he had in his life that they called for him to perform. And maybe they just want him to walk around, the one who had defeated them so many times, and he's walking around, and they're making fun, they're laughing, and they're drinking, and the place is just full of anything but godliness. And I wonder what was going through Samson's mind at the time. I'm a failure. I had it all. I had God. I had His Spirit upon my life. I was successful. I could have beaten these individuals. I could have accomplished great things. Look what I did. Why didn't I have wisdom with Delilah? Well, why did I treat God's hand on my life so flippantly? Why did I have such a terrible past? And in this moment, he could have guarded, he could have had an attitude towards his future that tied into his past. He could have thought, I am forever ruined. I will never do anything great for God again. My future surely is bleak because of my past. The cloud rests over my future based upon what happened in my past. But Samson has an attitude change. In the midst of knowing what his past is like, he tells them to put him up against the pillars. And he's standing there, and he thinks to himself, I know what my past is. I know that all the things I failed in. I know all the times that I messed up on God. I can't fix that. I can't change that. But my past does not need to determine my future. And his hands are on those pillars. And he says, God, if you just give me one more time, if you just give me one more opportunity, God, just let me have one more chance to do something incredible. I see a future that will bring honor to you. I see a future that will ensure that I get my revenge. I see a future where I can take out your enemy all at once. God, just give me the strength one more time. And he looks towards his future in a way that's quite different from his past. And as he puts his hands on those pillars, he prays that the Spirit of God would come on him one more time. Just one more time. My future doesn't need to be tied in with my past. My future doesn't need to be limited by my past. I believe I can still do something incredible. And as the Spirit of God comes upon him, his strength comes back and he pulls down the pillars. And the Bible tells us that the place is destroyed and he kills more people in this moment than any other time in his past. Because, friends, he didn't let his past determine his future. I'm here today to tell you that some of you need to get set free from your past. You keep looking towards the future like you're going to fail. You keep looking towards the future like you have no hope. You keep looking towards the future like life's going to just keep throwing you curveballs and you're just going to keep missing, striking out. You keep looking towards the future like you're going to fail. And I'm here today to tell you that your past doesn't need to be tied into your future. All you need to do is grab hold of the pillars and say, God, just give me one more chance. God, just one more time. Let my future be different. Let me do something significant for you. I don't care how old I am. I don't care where I failed. I don't care where I've messed up. But God, just give me one more chance. One more chance. With you, anything's possible. And friends, it doesn't matter where you've been in the past, it's where you're going in the future. You see, some of you need to start looking towards your future with incredible anticipation. You may do your greatest thing in the future. I'm here today to tell you that I believe for most of us, our best days are still to come. Our best days are still to come. Why do I say most? Because those who refuse to look forward with a positive attitude Those who keep looking towards the past can never get their best days. But those of us who say, forget my past, forget what the past has done, forget the sins that I've accomplished, all the things that have hurt Jesus, it's all under the blood. No matter what I've failed and no matter where I've been hurt, no matter what has happened to me in the past, I choose a future that's tied in with Him. My best days are yet to come. Friends, you need to believe that your best days are yet to come. Oh, but Pastor, I'm fairly old. I'm telling you that Abraham was a little old when he had a kid. Now, I'm not asking our seniors to start populating our nursery. Just erase that from the video. But friends, I'm here to tell you that if you removed your limitations, the best days are yet to come. You don't need to keep looking backwards at the things you failed and the things that have been done to you, the things that have limited you. Start looking towards a future that's been planned by God and grab hold of the pillars and say, the best days are yet to come. I'm here today to tell you that the best days for this church are yet to come. I'm here today to tell you that the best days for your family are yet to come. I'm here today to tell you that the best days for your individual life spiritually are yet to come. I'm here today to tell you that the best plans that God's got for you are still to be had. Don't just live in the past. Start looking towards the future. The best days are yet to come. And so we recognize that our past does not determine our future. Lastly, I need to close up Daniel chapter 6, one of my favorite books of the Bible. Daniel chapter 6. You need to see obstacles as opportunities. Daniel chapter 6, verses 19 to 26 says this. At the first light of the dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. When he came near the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve, continually been able to rescue you from the lions? Daniel answered, O king, live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouth of lions. They have not hurt me, because I was found innocent in his sight, nor have I ever done any wrong before you, O king. And then the king gets super excited, and look at this, down in verse 25. Then King Darius wrote to all the people, nations, and men of every language throughout the land, may you prosper greatly. I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom, people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel. Daniel's had some knocks in his life. I mean, he's had some moments that are just really frustrating. I mean, Israel has come under captivity, the Babylonian conquest in 586 BC. And he finds himself now under Babylonian rule. He doesn't have the temple to worship in. I mean, he finds himself with some guys that's sitting at the table, and they're supposed to eat a meal, and there's this moment of conflict, and people are looking at him because he's not fulfilling the dietary commands of the king. Oh, there's this moment where the king's having dreams, and all the wise people are invited in, but Daniel gets the ignored notice. Well, I'm looking for some other term, but he gets ignored, and he's totally overlooked, and they're about to kill everybody because nothing's happening. There's no wisdom. Daniel steps in and hears from God, and yet he's still limited. And there's this moment where they're supposed to bow down before an idol, and we find out that Daniel's 3 buddies get thrown into a fiery furnace. Oh, this is a great life, great season. And now there's this decree that he's not allowed to pray, and Daniel he's committed to God, and he finds himself in his bedroom praying this one day, and they've set him up, and so they arrest him because they find out he's praying. And as man of God, he's been doing all the right things. He's been living fully for God, and now he finds himself thrown into a den of lions. Great reward for serving Jesus. If you'd like to give your life to Jesus today, there's a chance you might be thrown into a den of lions. How many would like to raise your hand right now? This is what he's dealing with. And I wonder if there are moments in that den where he starts wondering, what's the deal with serving Jesus? Or not Jesus, because Jesus isn't on the picture yet. What's the deal with serving God? Just want to make sure I'm still in the Old Testament. What's the deal? What's the deal with serving God? What's the deal? I don't get it. Why do I keep facing these trials? Why do I keep facing hardships? What's the deal? I've been faithful. Now I'm in this den of lions, probably going to end up in some of these lions' mouths. I don't get it. It would have been so easy for him to let his attitude get negative. But in the midst of this, he's trusting God. This just might be God's opportunity. This obstacle that I am might just be God's opportunity. This just might be a chance for God to do something significant. And while I don't understand it, while I don't want to go through it, while I would never wish this upon my worst enemy, I just may be in the midst of an opportunity for God to do something incredible. And he guards his attitude. And the next morning, he finds himself alive, and Darius comes to get him, and he's blown away by the fact that Daniel's alive. And because of this obstacle that Daniel sees as an opportunity, the entire kingdom must now fear and reverence God. Friends, there are times we're going through obstacles, and many of us, we get so down and sour-faced. We're just, God, what's the deal? I feel like I'm in a lion's den right now. Why is this going wrong? And we're walking around with all kinds of negative energy around us. I know that's not very spiritual, but that's what we're doing. We're just walking around with this negative energy. And we're this problem, and we're walking around complaining, and I get the joy of the Lord, but everything's wrong. It's just, we're just going around all the time because we keep looking at everything as if it's an obstacle. I'm telling you that you need to change your attitude, because the obstacle that you might be facing might be God's opportunity to do something significant in and through your life. You see, when our hearts are soft before God, every obstacle becomes an opportunity for him to do something incredible. The kingdom would never have feared God if Daniel hadn't been thrown into the den of lions. And some of us would never see certain steps of victory in our lives if we never went through the obstacle. We're doing some marriage counseling with my cousin just a couple weeks ago, and he says so many people ask God for patience, and when the trying time comes, they don't realize that God's giving them the opportunity to practice patience. They're like, give me patience. Well, he's providing the exercise by which it can happen. The opportunity. As a pastor of this church, there are times where I get a little concerned. I don't get stressed a whole lot, but probably the time the most is financially. I kind of wonder how we're going to do this. If we're behind, how we're going to face the future. What do we need to do? And so you ask our staff. I'm constantly saying, okay, now we just got to hold back on expenses. We got to do this. We got to do this. Well, friends, we came out of 2014 incredibly. We had financially done incredible. Numerically, we had done incredible. But we started off financially in 2013. We came out incredible. 2014, we started off very, very challenged. We need to bring in about $16,000 a week to meet our budget, and we were bringing in about $12,000 a week the first month. Things got a little better in February. We shot up to about $14,000, and then when I started preaching my series on finances, we shot up to $17,000. That was interesting. So I'm going to spend the rest of the year just preaching about finances. We were back and forth in the hole ahead, but we really got to this place where we were behind. And we actually got to a place where we were floating between $24,000 and $30,000 off budget. And I was quite concerned, and I was trying to think of what we needed to do, and I thought if this maintains, we're going to have to figure out some really drastic things. And a little bit of stress, and we're paying attention to expenses. Our cash flow was fine, and we weren't spending where we couldn't. And I was most concerned going into June that we wouldn't be able to do the outreach, and that really bothered me because this is why the church exists. We're coming towards the last week of April. And as I was walking through my office just praying, I said, God, this isn't my church. This isn't my finances. This is yours. And I'm just presenting this as an opportunity for you to do something significant. So, guys, I just want to remind you, last year we blessed the church with $5,000. We've practiced generosity. God, we're reaching this community. God, we're doing things faithfully. I'm preaching from your word, and I think we're right on track, and I think we're doing the right stuff. But, God, we're behind. This is what I'm asking you. By the last Sunday in April, would you fix the situation? Would you step in and perform a miracle? I didn't know how that was going to happen. I said, God, would you? Would you make this an opportunity for you to show your glory? So the last Sunday comes, and service ends, and Jill Blanky comes over to me and says, Pastor Jeff, did you get my email? And I said, no. Is it about the offering? And she said, yep. I said, was it good or bad? And she said, it was good. And I said, how good? She said, we brought in $44,000 today. Now, we got to bring in 16 a week, right? So 44 is pretty good. And I said, yeah, but this is the last Sunday that we push for the mortgage pay down, so lots of mortgage money. And she said, no. She said there was a significant check towards operations of $20,000. And friends, in that moment, my heart was overwhelmed and said, see, God steps in to show how glorious he is in every obstacle. And we cleared that. We just about fully cleared it. Yeah, go ahead. We went from being $24,000 behind to being less than $1,000 off track in one Sunday. And I was overwhelmed as I went to General Conference that week as I thought that I need to look at every obstacle as an opportunity for God to show how magnificent he is. And every time you face sickness, and every time you face a challenge in your family, and every time you face something in church, every time there's a situation where you want to get negative about it and say, the glass is so half empty, would you just close your eyes and say, God, here's your opportunity. Here's your opportunity to save somebody from the den. Here's your opportunity to step in financially. Here's your opportunity to make your name magnificent. Here is your opportunity. Here's your opportunity. Friends, we must be a church that looks at the glass half full, not half empty. God's calling us to guard our attitudes. Would you bow your heads and close your eyes? Remove the limitations. That spoke to somebody this morning. Look for destiny, not the deficiencies in one another. Realize your past doesn't determine your future. And lastly, look at every obstacle as an opportunity. This would be a place with good attitudes. Good attitudes. Heads bowed, eyes closed. Before we close, I want to ask this question. You've come to this church this morning. I don't know if a friend brought you, or maybe you've been just checking us out for the last little while, or maybe you're watching us online. And this morning you say, Pastor, I want to give my life to a Jesus who can allow me to face life like that. I want to give my life to this God who's got my future in his hands. This God who was willing to send Jesus Christ to die for your sins. If you're in this place, you say, I've never done this before, but today I want to give my life fully to Jesus. Would you just raise your hand? No one looking around, just you and me. Just quickly raise your hand. Last chance. Just one. Thank you. Thank you, sir. It's awesome. It's awesome. Sir, I'm not going to center you out, but I'd really encourage you to come to the front after the service. There'll be somebody here who will just kind of give you a package to help you with the next steps. Most important day of your life, giving your life to him. Congregation, as we leave this place in just a few seconds, on this beautiful, sunny, long weekend, I promise you there will be things that will go wrong in life. People will do things that will hurt you, and things that they'll say things they shouldn't say. I promise you there will be difficulties along the way, because they were there for Jesus. But if you'll look at the glass half full, if you'll grab hold of his attitude, if you will align your perspective with his, oh, this life is a great life. And the people that we do it with are incredible people. And there's a future that I am so excited about. And I pray that you would walk out of this place with incredible anticipation. Today might be a day where you will do something significant for God. Today might be the day that that lost child comes back to him. Today might be that day where he shows you something about who you are that you never saw before. Today is the beginning of an incredible future. Let's guard our attitudes. And so, Father, as we leave this place, I pray that your hand will be upon this congregation. Every day I'm thankful for the people that I get to serve. Every day I'm thankful and I dream about the things that you have for this place. And I am excited about our future. I can't wait from 5 years from now to see what we look like. I can't wait to see the things you do in people's lives. I can't wait for the dreams to be fulfilled. I can't wait for more souls to come in. God, I believe that the best days are yet to come. And I pray we will look at every situation as the glass being half full, guarding our attitude so that we can live fully for you. Bless this congregation this week, we pray, in Jesus' name. Amen. Have a great weekend, everyone.